So here's two of my worst Karen stories I've ever personally encountered. The first one is going back about, I'd say 3 years ago, and it was my daughter's 10th birthday. Now, every year we would always go and rent the same cottage for a week. This worked really well because my husband worked with the cottage owner. And in lieu of renting the cottage for the week, my husband would always go down there throughout the summer and build their docks, fix plumbing, etc. And at this point in time, they were actually building an elevator system because this cottage was on a steep elevation. And the original quote for this elevator would have been 75 grand. So this working relationship worked both ways. Now again, we did this for years. It was never an issue until the couple that owned the cottage were getting a divorce. Now when we heard this, we assumed maybe we were going to have to rent a different cottage that year, not a big deal. But my husband's friend said, nope, it's all good, everything's kosher, you can still have the cottage for the week. Perfect. We picked up the keys, didn't think any more of it. Well, cue the crazy Karen. And if you haven't figured out who that is, it is the soon-to-be ex-wife. So we show up at the cottage, we're maybe there 45 minutes. By that time, we've kind of unpacked everything, everybody's starting to relax, excited to start the beginning of our week's vacation. I'm outside on the deck looking at the beautiful water, enjoying a beverage with our two friends, and out of nowhere I hear cussing. And I turned completely confused to see my 3 children and my husband inside the cottage with this psycho losing it on my husband. Now naturally as a mom, because this is happening in front of my kids, I was going to straight up go in there. But I was quickly stopped by our one friend who actually happens to be a police officer. He didn't say anything to me, he just put his hand out and he just shook his head no, because he knew it would not end well with me being in mommy mode. From this point, my eyes connect with my 10-year-old daughter, who's now looking at me through the window with tears in her eyes. Might I mention, this is also her actual birthday. She was scared to move, but I just went up to the window and I motioned her to come out with me, and eventually she did just get up and come outside. So now I am outside covering my daughter's ears on her birthday as she's crying. All the while hearing this psycho go off on my husband saying that we are trespassing and she's going to call the cops. She then jumps into this elaborate story that 2 weekends prior, her husband had shut off the electricity at the cottage while she was renting it out to her friends that had a 9-month-old baby, and how horrible it was for this poor 9-month-old baby to be there without electricity. Personally, I'm on fire at this point because it's like, lady, you're literally cussing and threatening our family and our kids. And you expect us to feel bad because of a 9-month-old that probably will never remember not having electricity? Yeah, no, that didn't go over well. And then this crazy lady keeps going over the top saying how my husband should have talked or stood up for her in front of her husband. I don't know. It got so weird really quick. 1, my husband's not your therapist. And 2, backstory on her. The reason they're getting divorced is because, well, she likes opening her legs. Her soon-to-be ex-husband just finally had enough. And the reason he cut off the electricity is because he was covering all the bills. From my understanding, he has a well-paying job, so it is what it is. But after her affair, he decided, you know what, if you want the cottage, you pay for the electricity on it. Because she was making quite a bit of money renting this cottage out. I do believe it was somewhere between $1,500 to $2,000 a week. But either way, it was just obviously a really nasty divorce. Now, the funny part to this situation is we actually knew there was no electricity at the cottage. So we brought a generator with us and we hooked it into the cottage so we can enjoy the week with electricity. And the second this crazy woman found out we figured out a way, not that it's rocket science, to get electricity to the cottage, it was like a switch went off. Then she was being all sweet to my husband and asking him a million questions on how he did it because she wanted her cash. She wanted to be able to keep renting it out. And from there, we're all freaked out at this point. I just personally want to punch her in the face, so I'm kept out of this situation. So then my husband goes up the stairs with her, and for the sake of my daughter's birthday and everything else and trying to patch up this absolute nightmare of a mess, offers to pay her $750, which would be half of what she normally makes, right? Because she's supposed to give the other half to her soon-to-be ex-husband. I don't really care. I don't know what she does. So now she's super happy, and we just wire transfer over $750. And the crazy freaking woman goes off on her merry little way. But that freaked my daughter out so much, it took her 3 days. Normally, she loves having her own room in the cottage. She wants her independence. For 3 days straight, she slept in our bedroom, scared that this woman was going to come stab her dad while we slept. It was horrible. As for my other sons, they personally found the whole situation hilarious, as I quote them saying, "I've never seen a Karen in real life," as they laughed hysterically. So I guess, at least on that front, my other two children weren't too bad. We did manage to eventually have a really good week. I took the time out to explain to my daughter about mental issues, Karens, and we did end up having a good week. Now, fast forward a couple years, I do believe she did end up getting the cottage in the divorce, and magically rang up my husband wanting him to fix stuff. Yeah, I told my husband, hell no. But I don't know. What do you guys think?
Nope.
All right, so my next Karen story actually hurt me way more than I thought it would. If anybody's a content creator, you'll probably understand that as much as it's looked at, it'd be like, oh, you just play video games all day. That is so far from the truth. I actually only get to play video games when I stream, which is only 2 days a week. So I don't play video games that much. But what I am doing a lot is video editing. I spent countless hours video editing. So one beautiful Sunday afternoon, the hubby decides he wants to go take a family member driving, and my daughter decides to go with them. So I was sitting in an empty house on a Sunday and I thought, perfect, I'm gonna grind and get more video editing done since the house is quiet. About 4 hours later, hubby and my daughter come back, and I'm sitting on the deck with them, and I was like, oh, how was the drive? How did it go? And my daughter pipes up, oh, Mom, you should have heard what so-and-so said about you. For the sake of stirring the pot, I'm just going to call this person Cindy. And that took me off guard. And I was like, oh, why? What did Cindy say? And my daughter pipes up and she said, Cindy said, you are a horrible mother. I was flabbergasted because I happen to be really close to Cindy and go out of my way to do really nice things for Cindy because she doesn't have a lot of people in her life. My husband's face literally dropped, and you could tell he was cringing inside. Cindy happens to be one of his family members. So I tried to collect myself, and I said to my daughter, I was like, why? What did I do? What happened? And my daughter said, well, Cindy asked me what you were doing. And I said to Cindy, you were playing video games. And as soon as I told her you were playing video games, she started freaking out and calling you a bad mom and that you shouldn't be playing video games. You should be spending time with me. I was instantly crushed for multiple reasons. One, the stigma around video games. I'm sorry, people, you need to get the heck over it. But two, I wasn't even playing video games. I was working. I was editing. So in that moment, I kind of just, laughed it off a little bit, and then I excused myself. I am not going to lie. I went upstairs and I started bawling my eyes out. And once I had my little moment, I wiped my eyes and I thought about it. This was a great opportunity to actually really have a good conversation with my daughter about what I do. Because I don't just play video games. Overall, it ended up being a bonus because I got to sit my daughter down, show her how to do some video editing, which in turn she kind of was like, oh, I don't know how you do this, because it was very boring to her. But two, also teaching her multiple things. One, be careful about what you say, because you can say something that's not true and it can damage a person's reputation, whether you mean to or not. But lastly, a parent playing video games does not make them a bad parent. The stigma attached to that is just very old school and honestly doesn't need to exist. And I do believe my daughter learned a very valuable lesson that day. And for anybody that's wondering, sadly no, I never talked to Cindy. I would have loved to, but honestly, I feel like she's one of those people that wouldn't get it anyways. And there's no use in having a loop conversation with people that aren't willing to listen. So I left it alone and had an awesome heart-to-heart with my daughter. So I still consider that a win. But on that note, those are my 2 crazy Karen stories. I would love to hear yours. And as always, keep being awesome.